The consumer purge is on and has been going on for a while. The acceleration of production since the Second World War, a car in every pot and a chicken in every garage, had to lead inevitably to overproduction, leading straight to the production of mere waste that avoids the middleman of being consumed, inbuilt obsolescence to keep production producing, scrap heaps turning into scrap mountain ranges, and you'd think the answer would be everyone a consumer, equal access to all production for all, but that's just not so. That just isn't how things have turned out. You can't have an entire planet of middle-class consumers. Who'd clean the sewers? Robots can be more expensive than people when it comes to the really shitty jobs no one wants to do. The fact is that they just can't lower prices to allow just anyone to buy their worthless shit. They have to make distinctions between deserving and undeserving consumers. So now we've got people on those scrap mountain ranges scrounging for bits and pieces to make the phone work for a few hours, or to sell for a handful of copper coins to maybe buy some nutritionally drained vegetables to feed a family of 10. In fact, people really are the problem. Overpopulation. There isn't enough money to boost the standard of living for millions of people in countries that don't count. Not as long as there's resources that can be plundered at minimum cost from local warlords and despots whose idea of foreign aid is a few extra million in their personal bank accounts. Now, those warlords and despots are the deserving consumers. Those are the consumers who have risen above the pack to be very good customers in good standing, and that's how the system likes it. Good customers, good standing, no complication, no problems. We've got mass production of products, mass production of people, and mass production of money. There's never been so much of either of these things in the history of the planet before. So now they're purging consumers, just keeping prices above the reach of the most so that only the most deserving can afford them. That's how the market works. It lifts people out of poverty, provided there's always a poverty to lift them out of. Otherwise, the whole thing goes tits up. A surplus of consumers is always better than a deficit, but it's getting a bit overbalanced now. What with so many, if the wealth was fairly distributed, it would give the whole game away, and that would never do. Anyway, the market wouldn't allow it, so it's a moot point. Time to let the magic of the marketplace just let some of these excess consumers, these undeserving consumers, slide into the pits of the consequences of their choices. The choices they didn't make and the choices they were forced to make anyway. It's all very rational and logical, and you wouldn't want to upset it by rebalancing things with measures outside of the marketplace. That would just stuff things up, because these enormous stuff-ups that are now happening are just a matter of perspective. So of course people outside of the comfy countries have been purged for decades, and now people in the country comfies are feeling the bearing of perfectly rational economic decisions, and we're not liking it now. We're starting to whinge a bit about it. A bit late for those who have already been purged, but those of us with a voice get to whinge about it now, and it'll be just as officious as any of the previously purged who would have been yelling and crying and begging and sighing all out of earshot, all nicely and quietly on the sidelines when the news seldom goes, unless there's a big story to gain hundreds to please the advertisers and data harvesters. Then let the circle churn again, and those hundreds of thousands of human tragedies are gone and forgotten into oblivion, where undeserving consumers deserve to go. We'll be meeting them there very soon. It's started. It's our turn now. We cozy people, we who speak English and have educations and whose parents own property, it's our turn to be deemed undeserving and to suffer on the scrap heaps that are already piling up in our coziness. We've pitied all those sleeping rough. We've tut-tutted at government inaction for Indigenous communities. We've all heard the odd tale of someone with a disability getting the running around to the point of death, and now it's our turn, the well-meaning, the righteous. Now it's our turn to really get to know what it's like to be picked and chosen to be discarded and either left in reserve or just left outright to rot on the heaps. The consumer purge is on, and it isn't enough to work a job or be looking for a job. You've got to be able to pay for the rent and bills and food and medicine and the kids' school fees, with prices getting higher on everything. Rent, bills, food, medicine fees, the lot. It's just the market reacting to circumstances. Not their fault there's a war on, or there's droughts and floods and fires, and sure, there's price gouging built into the system, but it's a system that works. You wouldn't begrudge someone who's worked hard and done well in their life a few little perks, a little bonus for the CEO, a few extra shares for the holders. The system works, and it just wouldn't do to fart hardened about with onerous taxation and regulation. What are you, some kind of commo? This is the real world, and in the real world it's the people who have a go who get a go. People who own more than one property, made the right connections when they went to the right schools, got into the right high-paying gigs when the moment was with them. That's how the system works, and there is no other, so shut up and deal with it. The consumer purge is on. Some consumers are more deserving than others. Don't go complaining if you're not up to snuff. Either lift yourself up or bugger off somewhere out of the way and starve.